Hi guys, and welcome back to Jetbox TV. Thanks for being here, thanks for watching. Please subscribe and like because it makes me feel like I'm really special and it's worthwhile me doing these videos. You may have heard me talking about flying IFR, IMC, VFR and VMC, and I'm going to explain today what all those means and what the implications are. It's a complex area of aviation, and so I'm not going to be going into too much detail. I'm merely going to explain the fundamental differences so that you understand it a little bit more. I'm predominantly going to be referring to fixed wing aircraft in this video, as you cannot fly a single engine helicopter in IFR conditions, IFR in IMC conditions. So think planes predominantly for this video. If you're a pilot already or you're learning to be one, then you probably have an appreciation already in the difference between IFR, VFR, IMC and VMC. In which case you might want to pop over to my channel, take a look at some of the other videos that are there. Although if you do stay here, you might actually learn something, or maybe not. So my name is Joel, I'm a private pilot with over 3,000 hours logged and thousands of hours not logged if I'm crewing for someone else or if I'm mentoring. I hold CAA and FAA pilot's licenses for both helicopters and aeroplanes, and also CAA and FAA instrument ratings for planes. So CAA being the United Kingdom, FAA being American. That pretty much gives me the opportunity to fly all over the world. I own a Eurocopter EC120 helicopter, Piper M350 cabin class pressurised aeroplane, and a share in a Cirrus SR20. I spend a lot of my time airborne and I fly all over the UK and Europe. And next year I will be celebrating 40 years as a private pilot. Anyway, back to topic. First, I'm going to explain what the references stand for. VFR stands for Visual Flight Rules, whereas IFR means Instrument Flight Rules. Therefore, VMC refers to Visual Meteorological Conditions, and you probably worked out that IMC is Instrument Flight Conditions, so Instrument Meteorological Conditions. Well, that's all well and good, but now what? What does that mean? Well, first of all, both VFR and IFR are a set of rules that pilots must comply with, whereas VMC and IMC are a set of weather conditions. The prevailing conditions will determine, or may determine, what set of rules you have to fly by, or whether indeed you can fly at all. If you're a private pilot, it's highly likely that you won't have an instrument rating, in which case you can only fly VFR, that's Visual Flight Rules, when visual meteorological conditions prevailed, so VMC. In this respect, think very little or no cloud and good visibility, bright blue sunshine. In stark contrast to this, professional pilots who fly commercially and or for the airlines and hold a full instrument rating, which they will do, allows them to fly under IFR in IMC. So that's Instrument Flight Rules in Instrument Meteorological Conditions. Think low cloud, poor visibility, fog and weather such as rain. You still here? You following me? Just bear with me. So here's an example of visual meteorological conditions. And here's an example of instrument meteorological conditions. So that's conditions, but what are the rules? Well, I'm not going to go into them into explicit detail because, as you'll probably appreciate, it's an in-depth subject. But in essence, under visual flight rules, pilots operate on a see and avoid principle when it comes to other traffic. Each pilot, if they're flying outside of controlled airspace, is responsible for keeping a good lookout and avoiding other aircraft. And this is the environment under which most private pilots fly. A pilot operating under VFR must remain in VMC conditions. They must remain clear of cloud and in sight of the surface. That means they can't be above cloud unless they can see the ground. Now, this might happen if the cloud is scattered and there are plenty of gaps in the sky. They can be higher than the cloud. The cloud could be here, plenty of gaps over here, and the aeroplane's over here. They can see the ground, they're clear of the cloud, that's absolutely fine. But a pilot who does not have an instrument rating and inadvertently enters cloud will become disorientated very quickly, in seconds. They'll lose control of the aircraft, and if they're unable to exit cloud, they will likely suffer very serious consequences. That usually involves a crash and a fatality. So inadvertently entering IMC is a very, very serious situation, and the consequences of it are usually experienced in less than 3 minutes. If you want to know what it's like, time yourself walking across from one side of a room to the other and filled typically with furniture, a table, a chair, all those sort of things. Now go back to your starting point and do that again with your eyes closed and see how long it takes, and not only that, whether or not you get to the other side of the room without hitting anything. The instant you bump into an obstacle represents you crashing, and that's what it's like to fly in IMC conditions. Now, in stark contrast to this, under instrument flight rules, pilots may not be able to see outside of the cockpit, and we're trained to fly by sole reference to instrumentation. Typically, the flight will be conducted within controlled airspace and will be separated from other traffic by air traffic control. In addition, the aircraft will likely be at an altitude that is not occupied by smaller light aircraft. So you may wonder why all pilots don't obtain an instrument rating, and that's a very good question. There's a number of reasons why. Firstly, it's not cheap, so cost is definitely a factor. Necessity. Not everyone needs or wants to be able to fly in adverse weather conditions. The aircraft that they fly has to be capable of being flown under instrument flight rules and in IMC, and most smaller light aircraft aren't adequately equipped. And difficulty. This is no easy thing to do. Obtaining an instrument rating is not for the faint-hearted. It requires a lot of theoretical study, 7 written examinations, and the practical flying, which requires a minimum of 40 hours training, is hard work, it's extremely challenging, and all of this is being done while you're not able to see outside of the aircraft. I've done it, and it was probably the hardest thing I've ever done, but it taught me to fly to professional standards and allows me to share the same airspace as the airliners, which is pretty much the airspace I'm in all the time when I'm flying my plane, G-Sci4. It won't surprise you to know that less than 1% of pilots or private pilots hold an instrument rating. And as G-Sci4 is basically a mini airliner, having a full instrument rating is a must-have. So there you have it, but here's a recap. Your typical private pilot is flying under visual flight rules in visual meteorological conditions. That is, the weather is decent and they can see where they're going. A pilot with an instrument rating is capable of flying in significantly poorer weather conditions where visibility may be low or even non-existent. They could be in cloud, they could be in rain, and they may not be able to see the ground. That's not always the case. We can be in VMC conditions, so visual meteorological conditions, operating under IFR. So we could be above a massive layer of cloud where we can't see the ground at all, but it's blue skies above. And we're in controlled airspace, and more than likely Class A airspace. So we've got beautiful blue skies, we've got great forward visibility, we've got no cloud above us because it's all below, but we can't see the surface in any way, shape or form. So we're IFR in VMC conditions. Pilots with an instrument rating are capable of doing the above by sole reference to the instrumentation. They can fly by hand or using automation in the form of an autopilot. We're also capable of doing this by sole reference to the instrumentation. We can do it by hand, or we can use the automation in the aircraft in the form of an autopilot. So just before you go, take a look at this video of me landing in full IMC conditions and you'll get an appreciation of what it's really about. If you've got any comments, if you've got any questions, leave them below. Please subscribe to my channel, please like my channel, please keep coming back. And one final question, do you think you could fly an aeroplane in IMC conditions?